This video is divided into 4 chapters. Chapter 1, gluing in the eyes. Chapter 2, sawing up the segments. Chapter 3, assembling the spine and tail. And Chapter 4, adding the control rod and fins. Please refer to my allergen advice before using any of the products in this video. You can find this on the kit list or at the tutorials page. Chapter 1, gluing in the eyes. Attaching the eyes with araldite or Gorilla Glue. There are 2 pairs of eyes in your carving kit. To glue in the eyes, I am using Gorilla Glue. This is a water-activated polyurethane glue. You can also use araldite or a 2-part epoxy glue. I demonstrate with araldite glue in my other tutorials. If you are using araldite, combine equal amounts of each part and mix together thoroughly before use. Step 1. Check the fit of the eyes. Starting with one eye, insert the wire through the hole. You can bend the wire a little so that the eye faces forward. Now push the eye into the socket to check that it fits. You may need to tweak the position of the pupil. Follow the same process for both fish designs. Tip: if you need to, you can deepen the eye sockets by using a 6mm woodworking drill bit. Twist the drill bit in the socket gently by hand, turning in an anti-clockwise direction. This will mean you can insert the eyes a bit deeper. Step 2. After checking the fit, trim the eye wires. You can use small wire snips or pliers. The remaining wire should be less than 1 centimetre long. Step 3. Glue in the eyes, one at a time. If using Gorilla Glue, apply some water to the eye socket. You can also dip the wire in a droplet of water. Next, squeeze out a blob of Gorilla Glue and apply glue along the eye wire. Tip: I used an offcut of wire as an applicator. Now insert the eye into the socket. Tip: Gorilla Glue expands as it sets, so don't apply too much or it might expand out of the hole. The glue will take about 2 hours to set. Chapter 2. Sawing up the segments. Dividing up the fish's body using a handsaw. Step 1. Draw in the saw lines with a pencil, as shown here. Step 2. Score along the saw lines with a knife. Slide the knife edge along each line to create a groove. This will help guide the edge of the saw. There are 4 saw lines on each side of the fish. Step 3. You are now ready to saw the fish into segments. You will need to clamp the fish in place to hold it still. I used a small metal vise, but you could try clamping it to a table edge. You will also need a fine-toothed handsaw. I am using a flush-cutting Japanese pool saw. It has a 26 TPI blade. That's 26 teeth per inch. I have put a link to this saw on the kit list, but there are other types of handsaw you could use. Try searching for a gent saw or a dovetail saw. The higher the TPI, the cleaner the cut. Important, you must start sawing from the tail end, moving along towards the head a segment at a time. If you start sawing from the head end, you won't be able to clamp the tail segments in place. The back segments will break off in 2 halves. 1 half for each side of the fish. Lay the segments out as you go, so you can remember which side is which. Turn the fish over to saw the opposite side. Take your time and don't rush. After you've sawn off the first 2 segment halves, move on to the next saw line to remove the stump. Follow the groove you cut in step 2. Once the stump is removed, you can move on to the next line. Keep going until you've sawn up all the segments. Here's the final cut. We'll tidy up these surfaces in the next step. FYI, the sawing process is the same for both fish designs. Step 4. A bit of sanding. Using some coarse sandpaper, smooth down the inside surfaces of each segment. You also need to sand inside the central slot. Fold the sandpaper over and slide it inside. Then move it up and down. This will make it easier to insert the leather spine in Chapter 3. Step 5. Painting the inside surfaces. Finally, you can paint the inner faces of the segments. I used a mix of yellow ochre and vermilion acrylic paint. You only need to paint the faces that will be seen. I used the same colour for both fish designs. Leave the paint to dry before moving on to Chapter 3. Chapter 3. Assembling the leather spine and tail. Cutting out the leather and gluing the fish together. Step 1. Laying out the spine and fin templates. In your carving kit, you will find 2 sheets of templates. These templates are actually sticky labels, which can be stuck temporarily to the leather. Important. Stick the templates to the shiny side, not the matte side of the leather. It will be easier to remove the labels from the shiny side. Lay out all the templates on each piece of leather. For Fish Design 2, I used the purple leather. And for Fish Design 1, I used the orange leather. Step 2. Cutting out the leather pieces. Next, you will need a scalpel, ruler and cutting mat. Cut out the pieces using a fresh, sharp scalpel blade, making sure to always cut away from your other hand. The sharper the blade, the cleaner the cut. You can rotate the leather as you go to make sure that you are always cutting in a safe direction. To cut out any straight edges, run your scalpel blade down the side of a ruler. Tip: keep your index finger on the back of the handle. Again, the sharper the blade, the cleaner the cut. Keep going until you've cut out all the pieces. Set aside the small fin pieces for Chapter 4. Step 3. Fitting the spine into the central slot. Before gluing, we need to make sure the spine fits. Keeping the template still attached, you should be able to slide the leather into the slot. Check your reference sheet to see how it lines up. On fish 1, 2 corners should meet at the bottom, here. And a small amount of leather sticks out at the top. Fish 2 is a bit trickier to fit, as the slot is deeper. The tab on the bottom will help you adjust the position. The bottom edge should be flush with the belly. Once you have lined up the leather, Make a small mark either side of the top hole. This hole is for inserting the control rod. So we need to remove some leather to make room for it. Using your marks as a guide, draw 2 parallel lines on the template, as shown here. These 2 lines should be about 3 mm wide. There should already be a slit in the template, which shows you how long to draw the slot. Cut out the slots using a scalpel and ruler. Refit the leather and check that the leather slot lines up with the hole. And check that the rod can be inserted into the hole. Step 4. You are now ready to glue the spine into the slot. Carefully remove the label template and discard. You will need some Yoo-hoo or Bostik all-purpose glue. I strongly recommend using the gluing method I'm about to demo. Without the template, the leather is now much stretchier, which means extra care needs to be taken to glue it into the right place. First, reinsert the leather without glue, so that a small amount of the tab sticks out at the bottom. Add glue at the top of the leather spine, just above the fish's back, on either side of the leather slot. You should also add some glue in the same place on the reverse side of the leather, not shown here. Now, gently slide the leather back and forth. The back and forth movement helps to distribute the glue inside the wooden slot. If you slide the leather in too quickly, the glue will just splurge out the top. Gradually ease the leather into its final position. Use this same gluing technique for both fish designs. Step 5. Gluing on the remaining segments. It's best to leave the spine to dry first, before gluing on the remaining segments. This should take about 30 minutes. Starting with the middle segment, apply the glue generously and evenly to the reverse. making sure it is completely covered. Gently position the segment on the leather, making sure there's a small gap between the segments. Use your reference sheet as a guide. When you are happy with the position, pinch the wood and leather together to bond the glue. Continue until all the segments are glued in place. Make sure that the segment halves line up. The tail segment is the fiddliest, as it's the smallest. It's the same process for both fish designs. Chapter 4. Adding the control and fins. The final steps and finishing touches. Step 1. Cut off the leather tabs. Hold the leather tab taut with your spare hand and slice across with your scalpel. Step 2. Removing the holding sticks using your handsaw. Make sure to give fish 1 a longer mouth. Step 3. Tidy up the mouth by knocking off the sharp edges. When you're happy, touch up the mouth with some acrylic paint. Step 4. Gluing the control rods. In your kits, you will find 2 small dowel handles. You can use Gorilla Glue or Araldite glue for the controls. If using Gorilla Glue, apply water inside the holes. Then coat the tip of the rod in glue. Insert the rod into the hole and wipe off any excess glue. Repeat the process to attach the control to the puppet. As a quick extra step, you can also paint the control handle black to match the rod. Step 5. Gluing on the fins, the final touch. The fin templates are labelled left and right, and they can be glued on with Yoo-hoo glue. I started with the smaller ones, which I position next to the gills, as shown. For the larger fins on Fish Design 1, I folded the fins in half to give them more shape. Then I glued them to the underside of the fish. For Fish Design 2, I glued them flat onto the underside. Now your fish puppet is complete. Time to try it out. This concludes my Carve a Puppet Fish tutorial series. If you'd like to send me any feedback, you can get in touch with me by email or through my social media channels. I'd also love to see what you've made, so do send me a photo or a video as well.